Welcome to Significance Breed Success. My name is Daniel Puder. I'm your host. Today, I am blessed to be here with Sherhara Downing. She's a communications trainer, rock star speaker. I've seen you on TV shows. I've seen amazing pictures of what you're up to with leading groups, impacting lives. I'm really excited today because communication is a big thing, and we're never taught communication in school. No. Big challenge. Why not? Why are we not taught this?
You know what? I think that it's one of those things where this, and not to get all extra deep, but the schooling system is not built for how society has evolved in the last 100 years, right? And I think that it is just continuously perpetuating an old version of itself, and no one's on the same path or on the same mindset to change radically the school system that really prepares for a society as it's been for many, many years. So you may have a public speaking class in high school, you may have one definitely when you get to college, but that's just one. And I think that it's a bad thing, just in short words, to only leave the students who were part of student council to work on their public speaking because they ran for office, or the people who did theater, right? And so they got to work on their speaking skills, or the ones who were a part of the debate team. You had to have some type of extracurricular activity in order to immerse yourself in it. So it is quite a shock when you get into college and then you start to find out you've got to do these things called networking and speaking extemporaneously, and you feel like fish out of water. So I don't know when they're going to get their act together, but until then, people typically have to seek out that type of support.
So I just had a baby boy 2 months ago, but 9 weeks actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He's super amazing and loving. And I was at an event yesterday getting an award, and one of the guys mentioned, he goes, something about don't talk to strangers. And I've talked about this before because we're told as kids, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. It's like over and over and over. And I get the context of it, but I find that a lot of people are told that and then they don't talk to people.
Yep.
And then they're having problems, right? Like, tell me what your thought is on this. Like, this is not the right way.
And then, so when you're a kid, you're taught, don't talk to strangers. And then as you grow up in adulthood, maybe even after college, there's this thing called no new friends, which I absolutely despise. Now, you and I, in our line of work and how we've evolved in loving ourselves and loving the people around us, we probably do not adhere to that very limited mindset of no new friends. But the idea of don't talk to strangers and no new friends continues to cripple people. And I think that people need to throw that whole idea out of the window. You have to talk to strangers. Talking to strangers is probably the best way for you to start working on your public speaking skills and working on your communication skills, because you have to dig and be curious and not be afraid to ask questions. And then also, first and foremost, just put away the fear that stranger is danger. It is not. Or that new friends aren't as good as your old friends. Put away those fears that if I talk to a stranger, then somehow they're going to find my phone number, stalk me, and then come kill me in the middle of the night. I'm like, what are y'all really afraid of when you're talking to a stranger? Like, I don't get it. But I think that those are definitely two ways that if you are in your adulthood, and you're looking to expand your network, you're looking to expand your set of understanding and knowledge of society and current events and just what people do, then challenge yourself to talk to more strangers, even if it's at the coffee shop or standing in line. I actually ran a campaign many years ago called Stop a Stranger. And it was really about the everyday way that we step out and improve our communication skills and improve our public speaking by just having conversations with strangers. The reason why you feel like you can't talk in front of many is because you're afraid to talk in front of one. So talk in front of one stranger, get to know somebody. And that whole no new friends thing, if that's still your mentality, then that's why you're not winning, period.
So I, as a kid, was labeled learning disabled. and I I was a nice kid, very sweet, like when I was younger, and then I started getting angry and pissed off, and got into a fight, and went to juvenile hall, and became a pro fighter, and learned how to love myself. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with like beating people up for a living. Like that doesn't serve my purpose at this point. And I find that the first time that really, so there's two huge things that change my perspective about talking in front of people, because a lot of people, they say that public speaking is the number one fear, which I find it's not. It's the unknown, but that's what most people get to do because it reflects on that. Um, and I had to dress. So in a college class, I had to dress. We were doing this like this public speaking group thing, and I had to dress like a woman, part of the skit. So that was like the first time that I was like I didn't have to. I chose to, but they were like, okay, you're the woman part of this skit. I was like, awesome. So I came dressed like a woman, which was very interesting to me because I usually don't cross dress. And then the second time was in WWE when I was in front of millions of people on TV, and they're like, go, and you're in front of 30,000 people in the audience plus millions on TV, and you get to perform. I got to perform. So the only thing that got me ready for WWE was my coaches getting me ready for promos and speaking and everything else. But what got me ready for that was my speaking class in college. Yeah. What do you recommend? First, let's back up a little bit. When you were a kid, were you just this outgoing and positive and upbeat and everything else, growing up in Houston, Texas?
You know what? It wasn't until I find that, and I'm going to tie these two things together. A leadership position is what put me in a place to feel more comfortable about speaking in front of people and believing in myself. And a lot of times when people have a hard time expressing themselves or communicating, they've never really had the practice to do that with other people. And they've never been in a position to be valued. So in 5th grade, there was this program called the Maywood Mediators, and we were taught conflict management. And so we would go out on the playground. We had these little sashes on with our clipboards. And when there was conflict, we were supposed to approach and go through these steps to help these kids, resolve their conflict. And for me, I don't know, I took it and ran with it. And I would say that was definitely when I started to realize that I had a voice and that I could influence people and that people would listen to me. And then it just was a snowball effect after that, because I then found myself in more leadership positions. So I was always a part of student council. I was always a part of, Key Club and all of these different organizations. So I think that to tie that into the second part, no, I wasn't always like that, but I got exposure very early on into leadership. And so if you are a grown adult and you want to improve your public speaking skills, I think that you should do one thing that Daniel has already done, and that's taken some type of like acting, improv class, public speaking class. If you've ever had an opportunity to take that acting class or theater in high school, I think that kind of sets a bug in you. But then what organizations are you a part of? And not only what organizations are you part of, but are you a chairperson? Did you run for secretary? Did you run for president? Are you a board member? If you don't find yourself in spaces of leadership, then you're not going to find places that are going to affirm, your thought process and what you bring to the table. So with the lack of confidence and then also the lack of platforms, no wonder you may find yourself plateauing in the space of feeling confident when you're speaking amongst a group or even amongst other people. So.
Wow. Do you find that most people, like what I've seen with public speaking, is more people have a harder challenge speaking in front of a small group than a bigger group?
You know what? Daniel, I'm going to ask you, did you have a harder time speaking in front of a smaller group before you spoke in front of a big group? Which one was easier for you, or did you kind of just jump into them both at the same time?
So I think I started in a smaller group because I didn't have an audience of 30,000 people when I was in my teens. But I find that doing presentations and things like that when I was younger, I got more nervous when there's like smaller rooms looking eyeballs on me. And I don't think, I mean, as a kid, I didn't understand my own emotional or belief intelligence too. So nobody ever talked me through before I made a presentation. Hey, think about how you feel, like be okay with it and understand that we're here to support you. And like that, team mentality, nobody ever prepped, like from what I remember, nobody ever prepped me for that. So it's interesting how they're like, go make a presentation, but they don't teach us on the mindset of presentation. It's just like most sports in middle school or high school until you get to really college, or when I was a pro. Now you have top psychologists that are doing mindset, visualization, that sort of thing. So if we teach that in our high schools now, with middle school starting sixth grade, all the way up, because if kids want to learn and they want to be the best at something, the mind is the key to grit and vision and commitment and follow through. People can be the best at something when you're in middle school, but if you don't have grit or certain things, you're never going to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. And I think that it's interesting that you talk about that mindset, because that's the difference. Like some people like yourself would say, I think I feel a little bit more uncomfortable. I think it's a bit more difficult to speak in front of a small group, where it's maybe 10, 15 people, where you can actually see all the faces and see how they're responding to you. And then some people say they enjoy that better than they do maybe speaking in front of a group of 60 or a group of 100, right? And so that fear really is the space in which your strengths are. So I would say begin with that. If you know you're good at speaking in front of small groups, then continue to do that, find more opportunities to do that, and really live in it, really thrive in it when you're in it. But then also know that your opportunity is to try to find those spaces where you can speak to more audiences and vice versa. But I am not actually I don't actually believe it's more one or the other. I hear kind of equally. I kind of get freaked out in front of small groups, and then I kind of hear equally, nah. It's in front of big groups that I really start to get that anxiety. So it's kind of it's up to the person.
So diving into the communication side of it, what do you find where people lack communication most? Is it personal? Is it professional? Is it when they're younger? Is it older? I find younger and older people don't know how to communicate. The words that come out of their mouth are not accurate. They're not authentic. They're not a real expression of who they are. A lot of people today are very victim mindset. They're not saying what they want. They're saying what they don't want. So it's a good start, I think. But if they say, "Oh, I don't want this," like, okay, what do you want for lunch? Well, I definitely don't want this. Like, it's interesting how people are very committed to, they just don't know how to clearly and concisely demonstrate what they want.
Yeah. I think that the main thing that challenges people, even if you're comfortable speaking in front of audiences, even if you have experience with, being like an effective communicator, whether it's at work or whether it's at, some organizations or groups that you're a part of, I think the one challenge that most people have is getting to that space where they feel like they're speaking off the top of their head and not rambling and staying on topic. And so what the real issue is people's ability to organize their thoughts as they come out in words. And the way that I always like to visualize this is your brain is full of information highways. So you are asked a question, and now you have to sift through all of these information highways to figure out how to formulate your thought, your idea, your sentiments, and your feelings. So you become kind of like this traffic operator in the middle of your brain.